Hi everyone. So if you've been subscribed to my channel for some time now, you probably noticed that most of my videos are about desktop operating systems and desktop computing in general, like Linux, BSD, and ThinkPads and all that stuff. But today I want to talk about mobile devices and mostly about privacy on smartphones. I found that there are not a lot of good videos about privacy on Android, and in general I just noticed that a lot of videos and articles are very superficial. They would suggest stuff like, if you want to make your Android more secure, make sure to encrypt it, that kind of stuff, which everybody knows. And for this video, I wanted to consolidate all the information about how to harden your Android device for privacy and security in one place, in one video. So I hope you will find it useful. But before actually starting this video, I would like to say a few things that are important. First, this video is geared towards people that don't know that much about Android development and custom ROMs and recoveries and all that kind of stuff, but I still expect you to be able to use Google, DuckDuckGo and other search engines. So if you have a question, you probably should just Google it, and if you still can't find an answer, I will gladly help you, just leave a comment. But still, I wouldn't like to have a lot of people asking primitive questions in comments like, what is a ROM? Or like, how do I root my Huawei, whatever, and you should probably just Google that kind of stuff. And second, there are a lot of people that would probably leave comments like, why would you care about privacy? I don't have nothing to hide. If you have nothing to hide, if you are okay with giving out your personal data like location, interest, sexual orientation, age, and all that kind of stuff, that's fine by me. I'm not a privacy evangelist. I'm not here to patronize you. So if you feel like privacy is not really your interest and that you don't care about it, don't watch this video. It's very simple. I'm also sorry for the lights. I'm actually using natural light from the window, and the sun is always going in and out of the clouds, so the light changes a lot. And third, this is probably going to be a very long video, the longest I've made so far. So if you feel like you're bored, if you know this kind of stuff already, I'm gonna put some timestamps in the description and in the comments, so feel free to skip to relevant parts. In some regards, keeping our mobile devices secure and private is more important than keeping our computers private and secure. Because if you have a desktop computer, chances are you don't carry it around all the time. And a smartphone is something you carry with you every day, and you barely even part ways with your smartphone. It's always with you. If you know a little bit about Android and Google stuff, you probably know that Google has been reportedly collecting location data on all of the Android devices running Google Play services, even if the phone is in airplane mode. And in general, there are some reports that are showing that Android devices send 15 times more data than iOS devices, which is crazy. And let's also not forget that some other companies like OnePlus, Nokia, and Xiaomi have been sending data to Chinese services. And of course, when they were caught doing that, they said it was just a mistake. It was by accident. And they promptly fixed it. But still, the issue remains that a lot of phone companies, when you buy a phone, you kind of expect it to be private and to not send your personal sensitive data to Chinese servers, and they do that. And afterwards they just go like, oops, well, sorry about that. A lot of popular Android apps like Yelp and Duolingo also send data directly to Facebook. The only way to actually avoid your data being sent to Facebook is to not use those apps, which is, quite frankly, it sucks. And one thing that also has to be mentioned here is the permission system on Android. I think up to Marshmallow was like a mess. Basically, you have when you install an app, you have a list of permissions that you have to accept. And if you don't accept all the permissions, well, you don't use the app. And after Marshmallow, I think we got more of a granular control. You can turn off permissions one by one. But the thing is, a lot of apps are abusing those permissions, and a lot of users don't understand why it's important that you don't grant extra permissions that the app doesn't need. For example, we see a lot of flashlight apps on Google Play that request permissions to SMS, phone, storage, contacts, and you don't need all that shit. And here I would also like to mention a very loose, a very relaxed and chill policy of Google when it comes to publishing apps to Google Play, which is the reason why still in 2019 we have a bunch of malware apps on Google Play which are not regulated and which are only deleted if the issue goes viral and if a lot of media is right about it. And until then, Google doesn't give a shit, really. They just kind of roll with it and they say, hey, publish everything, we don't give a shit. And so with all of those issues in mind, of course the question that comes to mind is, are there any alternatives to Android? Because if you think about it, Google's biggest income source is selling your personal data. It's likely that Android will never become more, privacy minded, because in that case, Google will lose a lot of money. So the first mobile platform that comes to mind is of course Apple's iOS and iPhones. And I have to say that people suggesting that iOS and iPhones in general are better for privacy than Google and Android are correct to some extent, because Apple makes money from selling your hardware and software that comes with it. Google makes money by selling your personal data. And Apple had been marketing themselves as, paying a lot of attention to privacy and respecting your personal data and being very secure and private. But the thing about Apple's software is that it's closed source, and iPhones and other devices, they're basically walled gardens. So as much as I would love to believe that Apple wants to protect your privacy, they want to make your devices secure, I can only take their word for that. For me personally, words are not a good enough reason to trust the company when it comes to my personal sensitive data. And so far, I don't see anything but words from them. And one more thing, which is not directly related to privacy, is that when you buy an Apple device like iPhone, you will be forced into their ecosystem and you'll be forced to use proprietary software like iTunes to synchronize your phone with your computer, to maybe put some music on it or synchronize contacts. You will need to use iTunes, which basically forces you to use Windows or Mac OS. Another potential alternative to Android is called Sailfish OS. I've actually talked about Sailfish OS on my channel. It's a very solid OS, and in some ways it does kind of feel smoother and more thought out than Android. But the problem with Sailfish OS is that the list of devices they support is really short, and I think they only support Sony devices, and then there are also community supported devices, which some of them work pretty good. Some of them are missing a lot of functionality like Wi-Fi and calls. So if you rely on your mobile device on a daily basis, this is probably not an OS that you would like to use. I also want to mention AppGap. There's just simply not a lot of apps for Sailfish OS. For example, Telegram, I think there's only desktop version, which doesn't work that well. Then also there's no WhatsApp, there's a lot of social media and messenger apps are missing. And in the official builds of Sailfish OS, there's a thing called virtual Dalvik machine. I'm not sure exactly how it's called, but basically what it does is it supports Android apps using a virtual machine. At the moment of making this video, it's based on Android KitKat, which is 5 years old, and it's missing a lot of security fixes, and a lot of apps are switching to Lollipop as far as minimal system requirements go, so that will be trouble in the future. But as far as I know, they're working on a newer version of virtual machine, which is going to be based on Android Oreo. So yeah, that's cool. But then again, if you're going to be using Android apps, you might as well use Android, right? For now, if you set aside the Android virtual machine thingy, it's more of a feature phone OS really. But if all you need from your phone is music and then snapping a couple of pictures with your camera, you'll be better off using a feature phone, since those are not proper smartphones and they have a smaller attack surface. Librem phone is also coming out later this year, and it is very promising. It's going to run a full-fledged Linux. It's going to have hardware switches for connectivity, Wi-Fi and cell network, and it seems like it's actually going to come out. They're already sending out developer kits, and so it's not really like all those Kickstarter projects. But the thing is, it's going to come out with pretty dated specs, and it's going to be pretty expensive at that. I think now you can pre-order it for 649 dollars, and it's supposed to be even more expensive once it comes out. And again, it's only going to come out in the third quarter unless they postpone it again. So if you need a phone now, and if you want it to be somewhat private, this is not going to be an option for you, obviously. Then there are also other operating systems like Ubuntu Touch, Post-Market OS, and MeeGo, and what have you. We're going to leave those to the enthusiasts to tinker with them, since they're obviously not ready for everyday use and require a lot of effort to actually, run them on your device. So what is the best alternative to Android? What should a privacy-minded user that doesn't want his data to be collected and mined use? Well, Android. So why, despite all the flaws, is Android still the best choice? So first of all, most phone manufacturers support bootloader unlocking, which makes it possible to install alternative versions of Android and obtain root privileges, which is essential to get rid of Google stuff, and I'm going to explain a little bit more in depth why. Second, there's a lot of custom versions of Android which are called ROMs. They're supported by community, they're open source. Some of them include tools to protect your privacy and to control the app permissions a little bit more. Some of the popular ROMs are LineageOS, Paranoid Android, OmniROM, and Resurrection Remix. Third, by obtaining root access to our device, we can install a proper firewall, which lets us control internet permissions for every single app. We can block malicious domains by using a hosts file. We can remove a lot of bloatware which comes with the system, and we can do a lot of other cool stuff, which I'm also going to talk about in this video later. Fourth, there's actually a lot of great open source apps which don't abuse permissions and don't collect your personal data. You just have to know where to look. And finally, the lack of Google Cloud services like Photos, Drive, Contact Sync, Calendar Sync might seem like a huge problem, but there are a lot of good alternatives to them, and I'm going to talk about this later. Maybe in the next video, maybe in this one, I don't know. With that in mind, let's get started with our project. First thing we have to do is to choose a phone, obviously, unless you already have one, in which case feel free to skip this segment or watch it. I don't care. Make sure that the phone you're about to buy supports bootloader unlocking. You can check it very easily by just typing phone model bootloader unlock into DuckDuckGo or any other search engine. Don't buy phones that don't allow bootloader unlock or make it extremely hard. That will eliminate BlackBerry, some Nokia phones, Meizu, Huawei. Also choose a phone that has a very solid ROM community, has an official support for your favorite ROM, or if you don't have one, just LineageOS. This will ensure that your device gets regular updates from ROM developers, and that even when the official support from the manufacturer ends for the device, you're still going to have a solid community that is going to develop ROMs for it. And also, if you have a question about your device, there is a big chance that somebody already asked it. Stay away from obscure off-brand Chinese phones like Doogie, Blue, Li Echo. The problem with those phones is they're likely to have very few custom ROMs, a lot of quality control issues, and they usually just have very poor build quality, very buggy firmware. I also wouldn't recommend buying a phone that just came out like recently, because it's likely that you'll have to wait until there are some custom ROMs for it. And there's a good chance that there will be none, because the phone wouldn't be that good, developers wouldn't like it, it has some problems with firmware, etc. So you might want to buy last year flagships, or maybe the year before that. That's the best. So what are some good options in my opinion, and what phones you should buy? A first good option is popular Chinese brands like Moto, Xiaomi, or OnePlus. All of those companies have been caught collecting users' personal data in their stock firmwares, and Xiaomi literally has lock screen ads in MIUI, but we don't care much about that since we're going to be installing a custom ROM anyway, and most of the phones from those companies have solid ROM community, a lot of custom firmwares, which is exactly the thing we would want for a project. Another great option is Sony. In my opinion, Sony is the only company that makes good small phones. I mean, apart from Apple, of course. Some of their phones are in Sony Open Devices project, which makes developing custom ROMs for their phones a lot easier for developers. Some Sony phones do have major quality control issues, so do your research before buying one. And ironically, one of the best options to go with when it comes to a privacy-minded Android phone is Google Pixel. Pixel devices have this function called Verified Boot, which lets you sign your boot images and make sure that an attacker with physical access can't sideload a custom ROM, which would steal your data. Also, Pixel phones have a lot of custom ROMs. They're very popular with developers, so you will never have a shortage of custom ROMs on these devices. Lastly, I want to talk about caveats and other things to consider. Privacy on Android is always going to be a compromise. First of all, cellular networks are insecure by design. Devices that are connected to cell towers are really easy to track. They basically transmit their locations at all times, and also you can spoof a cell tower. You can buy a thing with darknet that basically pretends to be a cell tower, and anyone with this thing can track your location, intercept your calls and messages. It is illegal, but it's possible. Next, if you have NSA in your threat model, you might as well just give up here. If you're a dissident or journalist or a political activist, the measures that I'm going to discuss are not going to be sufficient for you, and you probably know that already, but still. This setup assumes Google, Facebook, and other data harvesting companies as threat actors, and what we're going to do here is not going to help you against a government agency, obviously. If you're targeted by NSA, securing your Android device should be the least of your concerns. Please stop watching YouTube videos and start running. One more thing that I would like to mention is that by unlocking your bootloader, you're making it easier for a bad actor with physical access to tamper with your phone. Basically, anyone who can use ADB, fastboot, and TWRP can do something nasty with your phone, maybe sideload malware or exploit. But there are also some solutions to that problem, which I'm going to talk about later. In general, if you're targeted by professional hackers with physical access that want to tamper with your phone, you probably shouldn't be using a phone at all, just use flip phone. Also, Android codebase is huge, and it will probably take a lifetime to understand how everything in this system works. Yes, it's open source, but still, it would take a developer with many years of experience to understand everything in this system. And because of that, Android has a very large attack surface, and security holes and zero-days exploits are going to be inevitable on this system. The setup that we're going to create is going to be much more secure than stock iOS or Android, but there's never 100% guarantee that you're going to be secure and that your data is going to be safe. So a rule of thumb is never keep anything critical and very important on your phone. So it's night, and you can probably see that the lights became red, and that means we're going to be doing very dark and sinister things. So basically, after you bought the phone, you came home, and you're wondering, what should I do next? And the answer is, you need to unlock the bootloader. The thing is, bootloaders on Android phones are not like bootloaders on desktop PCs. Think about them as sort of like bootloaders on MacBooks and Mac devices. They can only boot one system, and that is macOS. Same with Android devices. They can only boot stock Android OS that came with the device. And by unlocking the bootloader, it lets us load whatever we want and whatever runs this device. So conveniently enough, I have an Android device right here. It's Xiaomi Mi A2 Lite. I actually wouldn't recommend buying this device, the Xiaomi Mi A2 Lite, because there's not a lot of custom ROMs in it. There's no official Lineage OS, and I was dumb enough not to look before, so now you can basically learn in my mistakes. I have to warn you that in 99% of the cases, this process voids your warranty, and you should probably test your device for a week or a month if you really feel like it, to see if everything works, if camera works, calls work, screen doesn't have any dead pixels, and only afterwards should you proceed with unlocking it and doing all the nasty stuff on it. A friend of mine told me that if you relock the bootloader and take it back to the store, they usually accept it because they don't have any idea about custom ROMs and bootloaders, but you didn't hear it from me. On most phones I've owned so far, the procedure is quite straightforward. Basically, you go to the website of the manufacturer, for example Motorola, Sony, or Xiaomi, and you look for bootloader unlocking formula. There you have to sign up, you have to enter your email and read 1 or 2 pages of text saying how it's going to destroy your device, it's going to burn your house, and it's going to turn you into an alien, and how they're not to be held accountable for all of that. And then you basically check the box and you get the unlocking code. You also have to install Android platform tools, which is pretty easy. On Arch it's in AOR or even in Community, I'm not sure. Then you have to put your phone into fastboot mode, which I'm going to show you how to do it. Xiaomi, for example, on this model, you turn it off first. And then you press volume down and power button at the same time, and you get the fastboot mode. And then you connect your phone to your PC and you enter a fastboot command. It's different depending on the device, but the instructions should usually be on the manufacturer website, so just follow that page. Also, before entering the fastboot command and pressing the enter key, you should probably know that it's going to wipe your data, so back up anything that you deem important beforehand. So once your bootloader is unlocked, you have to install a custom recovery. This will let you install custom ROMs and gain root access. The most popular custom recovery out there is called TimWin Recovery Project. Just head to their website, twrp.me, and download the recovery file for your device. There should also be instructions on how to install it, and be sure to follow them because it's different depending on your device. So once you've installed it, launch the recovery on your phone, tap on Wipe, and choose Format Data. This will ensure that there are no leftovers left from stock ROM or any other ROMs. I should also mention that on some phones, TWRP does not support data decryption, so that means that once you've installed the ROM and encrypted your storage, you won't be able to use TWRP anymore. So think about that before actually launching the ROM and encrypting your data. If you decide to leave your phone unencrypted, which is not advised, but sometimes that's the only way, you should probably think about not installing TWRP on your phone, but running it from fastboot every time you need to use a recovery. This will make it harder for potential attackers to actually tamper with it, since you won't have recovery on your phone directly. Check out the official website of LineageOS and see if they have support for your phone. In case they don't, you can go to XDA forums for your phone and check out if they have something. And we'll need to download a few more things before we actually get started. Of course, I'll leave all of those links in the description. First, Magisk Zip and Magisk Manager, then also NanoDroid. We will need Bromide WebView, F-Droid, and microG packages. Don't forget to also download Patcher. This will let us have network location and push notifications, the functions that are usually achieved using Google Play services, and it will also let us use apps that normally require Google Play services to function. It will install a hardened version of Android WebView, which is basically Chromium, with some patches from Inox, Unlockable Chromium, and other projects, an open source app store called F-Droid, and apart from that, it will also install Google Play Store, but we don't really need that, and we're going to delete it as soon as we get to the ROM itself. You can download the full package of NanoDroid, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff in there which not everyone needs. If you have any problems with the patcher, just check out the signature spoofing section of NanoDroid wiki. After you have all this stuff, put it on your phone and flash it in the following order. Custom ROM first, then Magisk, and then Patcher, and afterwards all of the other stuff you have. After it's done, reboot into the system, and voila, we're almost done here. Custom ROMs don't usually come with a lot of bloatware, but it really depends on your definition of bloatware. I usually remove a lot of stock apps like calendar, calculator, gallery, all this kind of stuff. And it's all because there are cool apps called simple apps, which are basically replacements of stock apps without any ads or annoying interface features or something like that. And I would really recommend you to install those as well from F-Droid. In case you don't feel like it, just roll with stock apps, that's fine too. First thing you should install is Magisk Manager APK. It should be on your phone memory because we downloaded it in the previous step. Next, launch F-Droid and install Yelp Store. This is an open source Play Store client which spoofs a lot of personal data and lets you use Google Play without a Google account. So in Yelp Store we'll need an app called System App Installer Root. It's kind of fishy and it looks like a Chinese app, but honestly it's the only app that actually works for removing system apps. And after you're done with removing bloatware, you can actually delete the app and forget about it. Feel free to remove Google Play Store and any other app that you don't like calendar, camera, whatever. Don't worry, because if you delete something important and your system breaks, you can always flash it again. After the process is finished, reboot your device. Now it's time to install some apps. Just go to F-Droid and feel free to shop for apps that you like. But here are some apps that I usually install on a clean ROM. AdAway, it's a great ad blocker. It needs root, but it just works. AFWall Plus, it's a firewall. It's basically an IP tables front end. K9 Mail, which is a great replacement for stock email clients. KeePass DX, which is a password manager. Lawnchair, yeah, that's literally the name. NewPipe, which is a privacy-focused YouTube client. It lets you play videos in background and subscribe to channels without Google accounts, which I also talked about in this video. Nextcloud and Nextcloud Notes, no comments here. Offi, which is a public transport navigator. It's a great open source alternative to Deutsche Bahn Navigator if you live in Germany. Open Camera, OpenVPN for Android, Osmand, which is Google Maps alternative, QK SMS, it's an open source SMS application, as the name suggests. Simple Apps, which I mentioned before, they have simple gallery, simple calculator, simple calendar, basically everything you need. The default icons are kind of ugly, but you can change them with an icon pack if you want. Termox, Vinyl, and Yelp Store, which I already mentioned before. For browser, you can either use Bromite, which you can download from Bromite repository on F-Droid, or download Firefox from Yelp Store. Launch FWall Plus and block every app that you don't know. I mean, everything. Just look up the app name on the internet if you're not sure, but basically, if you block something that you're not supposed to block, nothing bad is gonna happen. You know, you just go back and try unblocking it. Don't block Captive Portal if you connect to open Wi-Fi's. Also, if you block Android system, your Wi-Fi icon is also going to indicate that you have no Wi-Fi connection, which is kind of weird, so I usually leave it. Also, don't forget to unblock Namanatim geocoder because it's needed for network location. Next, launch AdAway and download StevenBlack's hosts. Link is going to be in the description. And finally, launch microG and make sure that self-check is green across the board. So yeah, that's basically it. Now you have a very privacy-friendly Android phone. Now for some tips and recommendations. Only install apps that you trust. Always check the permissions that the app is requesting, and in case you need to install a botnet app like WhatsApp or Facebook, which you shouldn't, but if you really need to do that, you should enable battery optimizations and restrict background usage. This should prevent the app from running in background. Try messing with some privacy settings on your ROM, like Privacy Guard and LineageOS. Try revoking or spoofing some sensitive data for botnet apps. It's going to take some trial and error, but you know, data mining companies do not intend to make it easy for us, so consider locking your bootloader once you're done with all of the modifications. This is definitely going to make it harder for some kind of hacker with physical access to sideload some malicious software on your device. But be sure that you've done everything that you wanted to do, because once you lock it, to unlock it again, you will need to wipe all the data. So that's it. That's what I usually do when I buy a new Android phone. I hope you found this video useful. If there are some other things that you want to suggest to harden your Android device for privacy, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.